So these are the extra questions that came in via Twitter that Jack and I didn't quite get round to answering in the podcast that we've done. So the first one comes from Stephen, which is, what underpins your own values and beliefs that you incorporate into your own work life? And why do you think these are important within my organisation and role? So a great question to start with, really. And for me, values and beliefs and what makes people feel good in life and at work is just so fundamental to business success, team success, whatever it might be that you're trying to achieve. So for me, there are three that personally stand out. First one is listen first. So I have a belief that if I listen first, I'll be able to then build a better view or approach, tactics for that session, whatever it might be, based off what I hear. So yes, I've got views and opinions, but actually if I listen first, I can then shape that around the needs of the individual or the team or the organisation. Second one for me, really important value, is about treating people as individuals. So people are different, we know that, and we can see that in football, definitely. If I can work out what makes somebody feel good, work better, be more driven or more motivated, then I can work with that and get the best from them. So treating people as individuals is a really key value for me. And then my third one that stands out, particularly in organisational work, is fairness or doing the right thing. So that doesn't mean just being nice. It can be challenging and being perhaps giving feedback when other people haven't given that feedback to somebody before. And quite often in businesses, there's a context of reminding, particularly some senior people, that people are people. They're not just a business resource. So if you show that you know people, that you treat them well, that you're human, and that we get more out of people, then of course the business or the team or the organisation will succeed. So those are my three values, really. Listen first, treat people as individuals, and then this drive for fairness and doing the right thing. So the second question, which came in from Phil O'Brien, was, what are your observations on the vision and philosophy of organisations? Develop it organically or lay it on? So I don't think you can read any articles at the moment without sort of vision, culture being a hot topic. And for me, there's a real difference in organisations that say it and do it. So that regenerating it every day is absolutely true. So every action, behaviour or word that you live, or that your senior managers or that your colleagues live, satisfy whether that culture is working or not, good or bad. So I think where I've seen it work well is that you can establish a framework, you can establish a handful of principles that the culture and the values sit within. If everybody then isn't involved in shaping what it means to them and feeling as if they've had a say, then it isn't their culture, it isn't their vision and philosophy. So there's a difference between the organisation having a set of values and principles, but if they're done to me, then I will never fully believe that they're mine. So create the framework, but every day, and run some activities that allow people to shape those within their own teams and roles. And it doesn't have to be complicated. It can be a simple list or a simple conversation around, and if you were to do that, what would that look like for you? Or what would make that work for you? So that people feel that it's theirs. And as I said, it's more than just words on the wall. So another question which came in from Steve was around thinking about grassroots in a volunteer environment. So how do we reach or influence those who don't want to be or don't wish to be reached or influenced? So this question on volunteer, I know, is really relevant for grassroots, because without them, many of our clubs and teams just wouldn't run and wouldn't succeed. So there's a real balance then between what do I do when I've got volunteers who perhaps aren't behaving or supporting the way that you either as a coach or as the organisation or as a team want to move forward. So there's a couple of things that I'd suggest. First of all, it's trying to understand what's stopping that volunteer wanting to be reached or influenced and working backwards from that. So think about why did they first get involved in the club? When are they at their best? What is it that makes them really feel good about volunteering and about being part of football. If we don't know that, then that's a conversation to start and have with that individual. But once we've got that, it's them trying to work out, so what's missing? What are we not doing, or what's stopping that individual feeling good? And can we give them that and have that conversation with them? There is still a difference between can't do and won't do. So you can work all that out and have that conversation, and somebody can still choose not to change, not to be involved, not to want to be influenced. And that's ultimately that hard choice that we have when we're managing and leading people anyway. So if it's more of a won't do, then perhaps there's some feedback conversations around the impact of their behaviour, what their behaviour is not allowing them to get involved in, or where they might be missing out on opportunities. But very much work backwards from when are they at their best, what might we be missing, and how can we then perhaps frame it differently. That leads into our next question, which came from Samuel, which is all around difficult conversations. So where particularly I think there's a reference to parents. Parents have a fixed opinion about, for example, winning versus completing all the foundation phase first. How do you convince them that this hurts a child's development when it's this idea of diplomacy? So I know this is a regular thing, and it's trying to be really specific about your feedback to enable you to be diplomatic. So you may have heard me in the podcast talk about the AID model, AID, which is about how you can structure giving feedback that takes the personal piece out of it. So for example, the A is about action. So what the parent in this case might be doing or saying or encouraging. The I is then impact, what impact that might have on you as the coach, or them as a parent, the child in terms of their long-term development, the team. And that's where the feedback really lands with parents, if you focus on the impact of their child or the team or the success. And then the D of aid is what you want them to do differently or do more of. And again, you can be really specific about, I'd prefer it if, or I need you to, or could we find a way where, and you suggest what you want them to do differently. So that's AID, action, impact, do. I've got a great example going around in my head of my son's football team where a parent used to incentivise their child £1 for every goal that they scored. And it took a good few months for the coach to work with that parent around the impact that had, that the child wanted to always have the ball, wouldn't pass, lost trust then with the rest of the team, and only through some good conversations with that parent did that approach change. So I really get that question. Thanks for that. Next question that's coming from Richard Jones is, what's the first rule you'd implement on or off the field in regards to culture? So for me, trust is the foundation to any team working together, being successful. And there's several models out there that will show that. What that looks like, I suppose, in grassroots football is everything from, will you pass the ball to me? Is the coach working in my son's best interest? Will this tactic definitely deliver us being able to play better together? Whatever it might be. Do I like you as another player in my team? So what that would look like is encouraging a set of values where the children trust each other and trust you as the coach or as the team manager. So that could be agreeing some real foundations of, we play hard, we have fun, we support each other, we listen and respect, whether that's to each other or the coach or the referee. And that other piece that is important in businesses, which I see translating into football, is we also socialise together. So if I know you and we enjoy spending time with each other, or I know a little bit more about what makes you tick and who you are, then that will come through in how we play on the pitch. So trust is really a foundation for me about all success for great teams, and that's definitely something that I'd want to encourage no matter what the age of the team in grassroots might be. So our next question, which comes from Daz, is honesty always the best policy regarding managing negativity? Simply, Daz, yes. Absolutely fundamentally believe being honest is the best approach. The challenge we have is how you give that feedback, or you manage that negativity. So as I was saying before, when we choose to manage negativity, it's what we say and where we deliver it. So first of all, where are you giving that feedback? So be mindful of doing it, quietly away from people, or how quickly you manage that negativity. So for example, if you have a behaviour within the team, or a parent or a supporter, and we let that continue, you're actually saying it's okay to behave that way when you support our team or in a coaching session. So one is about timely dealing with that. And the second one, again, I referred to the AID model earlier, is making sure you choose your words really carefully. So you talk about what someone was doing, not you were aggressive, or, you've been lazy today in the session. Whatever it might be, you've got to focus on what they did, what the impact was, and what you want them to keep doing, or do more of, or do differently. So that will help you change that perception of negativity. But definitely, honesty is always the best policy, in my opinion. So this question from Ian Dipper is sort of 3 questions in one, really. So what are the key ingredients to managing people? Which one ingredient can you not do without? And then what type of people are the toughest to manage? God, sounds like Ian's got some real specific people in mind. So let's start with the first one. What key ingredients do I believe there are in managing people? So 5 spring to mind for me. Trust. I've already talked about that. Absolutely trusting each other. The second one, get to know them, what makes them tick. Thirdly, listening. We think we listen, but actually, do we listen, and do we take action on what we hear? The fourth one, importantly for me, is demonstrating what you advocate. So if I say I'm interested in people, if I say that I'm interested in performance or whatever it might be, my actions, my words, my behaviours need to demonstrate that first. So I need to lead by example. And then the fifth one for me is being human. So people it's that intrinsic piece. People know if you're genuine, people know if you're authentic. And there's a real ingredient in managing people and leadership at the moment about being human. It's okay if you mess up, it's okay if you don't always get things right, but get to know people as people. So those are my 5. Which one for me is most important? As a manager and leader, is demonstrating what you advocate. So if I expect others to do it, I have to do it first. I should be doing it first. I want to do it first. And what type of people are the toughest to manage? It's going to depend on what you find difficult. So if I give you a list, people who are highly ambitious, some people find that quite hard to manage in their team. People who are negative or moaners that perhaps bring down the motivation levels, that can be challenging. People who won't listen, or are really close-minded or really opinionated, that can be a challenge. People who are arrogant, believe they know it all. God, it sounds like I'm listing a previous team I used to work in. And then the other one, where perhaps people haven't had any feedback, so their behaviours have festered, and they think what they're doing is right because no one has told them it isn't. So there's just a handful of 4 or 5 that spring to mind. So what's the toughest to manage out of that is where, for me, the feedback hasn't happened early enough about behaviours. So if we haven't sat down and talked about values and behaviours of the team, if we haven't really thought about what's going to get the most out of all of us, you're then just working backwards. So it can be a whole heap of things. I think for me personally, and in my role sometimes as a consultant, it's where egos and arrogance get in the way, and people therefore close themselves off to listen because they believe they know everything. I can find that really difficult. And I suppose I can try and listen and persuade, but ultimately sometimes I choose to walk away and choose to say, there are people elsewhere that I can perhaps guide, support, mentor, coach, rather than spending time where I know that it's not going to make a difference. So I think it's a very personal one about what's the toughest to manage, but in any team you will have a number of those things happening at any time, and it's tackling it as quickly as you can to try and resolve it for the good of the others. final question we had in is one about diversity. So how important is diversity when looking at a club committee? And what examples do I have of this in practice in organisations, the way that it's helped groups think and make decisions? So again, for me, diversity is I think within football and within businesses, we are recognising that diversity is a great thing. And for me, it's extremely important. So if we take elements of that, it could be around age, could be around experience, could be about gender, and very much also is about culture. And all of those things, what I feel they bring is variety. So that variety for me brings creativity around ideas, different viewpoints, different questions that perhaps we haven't considered before as a team or as a committee or as an organisation. So there's two things that they will make that a success. One is having an open culture so that actually that diversity is valued and encouraged and is acted upon. And the second one is being open to create that diversity. So again, not doing it just because we think we should, doing it because we recognise the benefits it will bring. So there's a couple of examples that spring to mind. So within football, I can think very much where there's a few appointments that have been made of perhaps less technically minded football individuals, and what they've brought to committees or teams is just a different viewpoint where they'll ask perhaps questions around why are we doing that, what's the reason behind, and perhaps will challenge some of those very embedded principles and beliefs, which I believe can appeal to perhaps some of the younger generation we're getting into football, or the younger volunteers that really want to play a part in the way that football clubs and committees are run. The second part for me, I can think of a senior leadership team that I worked with in an organisation, male CEO, chief executive, and 6 male direct reports, and working with them to get them to work better together, not just singularly operate their business lines. The biggest challenge we had was them opening up and being quite honest about what weren't their strengths and what didn't work for them, and perhaps what they weren't very good at. 6 months after that initial piece, a change of roles, change of leadership, there was a female appointed into one of those roles. And just having a single female in that group brought a different dynamic, brought a dynamic of perhaps a bit more open about people and a bit more open about sharing some of that emotional intelligence. The danger was making sure that the female in that group then didn't pick up a lot of the activities around people, that it was actually shared out. And we looked at people as individual around talents and strengths, not just to do with their gender, but that the implementation of having the very first female into that group made a difference about the openness of that senior leadership group, which of course everybody else beneath them that was working in their teams could equally feel. So for me, diversity is brilliant, and perhaps in football I know that that's the way things are changing, and the culture within a committee or within a team needs to be open to accept and explore what difference any of that cultural, gender, age, experience difference will bring. I hope those answers have been helpful in some way. As the questions came directly from Twitter, if you want to get in touch with me about anything else or to discuss that further, the Twitter address for us, Create the Difference, so is @difference_the. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks a lot.
I've been meaning to record a new outro for a while now, and what better place to do it than in the bathroom of an aeroplane in mid-flight. Thanks to Liz for taking the time to answer those questions. The clarity and honesty of her approach really impresses me every time. We've been fortunate enough to have been working with Liz for the last year within the grassroots unit at the FA, and I'm looking forward to being challenged further by her over the coming months. Thanks again for taking the time to listen in. I'm really looking forward to welcoming a good friend and former teammate of mine, Matt Craddock, on next, who's been waiting patiently since we recorded the episode around Christmas. Matt is head of coaching at a championship club and shares some really rich experiences and advice for coaches looking to make a career in the academy system. Don't forget, if you enjoyed the show, please give us a hand to spread the word, and if you're feeling especially generous, leave us a review on whatever platform you're listening in on. Don't forget to follow us at Liverpool_CFA to keep up to date with everything going on local, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on the show so far. So if you want to get in touch with me, it's @JackWalton1. See you later.